Too, given the nature, given that these systems draw on existing power grids, it would be necessary for the FCC as a minimum and the Department of Energy as a minimum to have some oversight and control over what is going on. So obviously, the Congress, the FDA, and the Department of Energy, the FCC and the Department of Energy are knowledgeable and yet unwilling to do anything about it. So there is complicity, but the question is, whose bidding is the U.S. government allowing these operations to take place?
Technology that you're developing to fight the war on terror, specifically directed energy and high-powered microwave technology. When do you envision that you can weaponize that type of technology?
It is in, for the most part, the kinds of things you're talking about are in very early stages. Do you want to have anything you would add?
I don't think I would add much. I think they are in early stages and probably not ready for employment at this point.
Well, you sound like you're willing to experiment.
I think that's the point, and I think, we have, I think, from the beginning of this conflict, I think General Franks has been very open to looking at new things if there are new things available, and has been willing to put them into the fight even before they've been fully rung out. And I think that's not referring to these two particular cases of directed energy or high.
U.S. Defense funds $4 million on telepathy project code Silent Talk. Ever since the time of World War II, studies related to military applications combining brain-computer interfacing and new communications technology have been the subject of an ongoing interest in the defense intelligence agencies. Recently, U.S. Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, announced a budget funding of $4 million for a program called Silent Talk that would allow soldiers to communicate via brainwaves. The agency's researchers have recently undertaken a project called Silent Talk to allow user-to-user communication on the battlefield without the use of vocalized speech through analysis of neural signals. In simple English, it means telepathy. With the help of EEG to read brainwaves, DARPA is planning to attempt to analyze pre-speech thoughts and then transmit them to another person. The research involves neuroscience and communications-related technology to create a synthetic means of communicating or intercepting messages telepathically.
And the high ground defense is the missile defense satellite. The Space Tracking and Surveillance System, STSS, being built by Northrop Grumman for the Missile Defense Agency, will be an integral part of the nation's layered ballistic missile defense system. STSS is designed to track missiles in the boost, mid-course, and terminal phases of their flight, providing critical mid-course discrimination and tracking capability. This enhanced coverage is possible because of STSS's unique combination of sensors and low Earth orbit, enabling both look-down and above-the-horizon field of view.
Professor James Lynn is hearing sounds that aren't there, but he's not crazy. Pulses of microwave energy are being generated and fired at him from behind.
Microwaves can be heard depending on the individual, depending on the hearing acuity of the individual. Individuals with fairly normal hearing can hear microwaves at quite a low level.
The energy of the absorbed microwaves causes brain tissue to very slightly heat up and expand, causing a pressure wave to be picked up by the hearing mechanism in the inner ear. Professor Lynn is far from hearing voices, but it could be possible to send coded signals to an agent this way.
Brain is an electrical organ. It is susceptible to electrical signals. Since microwave is electrical, therefore, in principle, one could embed or encode information in the microwave signal such that it could be perceived by the brain.
Part of this issue is that the U.S. loses control, the U.S. government loses control in these foreign trials. I think what surprised us the most about this whole story, there have always been some foreign clinical trials. That, on its face, is not new. What astonished us was which this has happened. The statistics that Ron quoted there at the beginning come from an Inspector General's report just released this last year. But the speed of this is actually very much in the last 5 to 10 years. It's not just Western Europe. It's parts of the former Soviet.
I would say that most of those targeted are not and never have been a threat. I think that what happened initially when these operations began, probably 30 years ago, people were singled out perhaps because of some affiliation, either direct or indirect, with the United States government, and invited attention. But they were not singled out as being threats. They were singled out as being lucrative targets of experimentation.
Aside from what we just heard, which in terms of human experimentation is a major violator of both criminal and civil laws in the United States. I'd just like to add something to what James Steele said, which is we call this industry the Human Experimentation Corporations. The biggest human experimentation corporation is right here in the United States. It's called Quintiles. They do experiments for drug companies as quickly as they possibly can all over the world. We found an ad from Quintiles that says to the drug industry, we help you recruit drug-naive subjects in many developing countries. So this industry...
Inevitably what happens is these people voice these complaints to their employer, they voice these complaints to their family, their loved ones. Well, they can't hear it. It's designed for them not to hear. Invariably what happens is the person says, well, I don't hear it. It sounds schizophrenia or delusional or you see someone. And it's usually a loved one or an employer that ends up forcing that person in front of a psychiatrist. The psychiatric community has no knowledge of this technology, doesn't check into this technology, and further than that, if you look at MKUltra, most of the original mind control studies were headed up by psychiatrists. Many of the psychiatrists that did the original studies on mind control were presidents of the American Psychiatric Association, the American Psychiatric Association of, the Psychiatric Association of Canada. These were, top-level psychiatrists in educational facilities that were taking CIA funding to progress this type of technology. So, invariably what happens, the psychiatrist tells you the same thing that a family member would. I don't hear the voices you're hearing, therefore you're delusional or you're schizophrenic. And then the victim is further victimized by the psychiatric community. After a diagnosis like that, you usually lose your job, your family alienates you. It's a horrible technology, and that's one of the things that I was hoping with the book, the exposure, was to at least educate the psychiatrists that are within the communities